Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. Thousands of social media users worldwide are left without access to Facebook or Instagram. This is as the social media platforms face their biggest outrage in years. Facebook's chief technology officer provides some answers, but many questions remain. Dr. Anthony Fauci changes his position on Christmas gatherings. At first, he said that it was too soon to tell, but now he's explaining his stance. New York City public schools are now enforcing vaccine mandates on teachers and staff, but some are rallying in protest. NTD speaks to teachers who are on unpaid leave. Activists chase a senator into a restroom and film her. The Democratic senator accuses them of breaking the law. And the Biden administration sets out what trade with China will look like as China fails to meet its promises on Trump's Phase 1 trade deal. Many of you might have had trouble accessing Facebook and Instagram today. That's because the social media platforms, along with WhatsApp, were down in many parts of the world. NTD's Eileen Ang brings us more from outside Facebook's headquarters in California.
According to detection websites, Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp have been down since 11:40 a.m. Eastern Time on Monday morning. Facebook's internal communications platform was also down, leaving many employees unable to do their work. Down Detector shows that as of 12 p.m. Eastern, over 125,000 reports of a Facebook outage have been logged. Users reported being unable to access the social media platform in California, New York, and Europe. Similar reports were posted by Instagram and WhatsApp, both of which are owned and operated by Facebook. The company's chief technology officer took to Twitter late this afternoon to explain that they're experiencing networking issues. He said they're working to debug and restore the platforms as fast as possible. Although app outages aren't rare, to have so many interconnected platforms operated by the world's biggest social media company to go down at the same time is. The outage caused a drop in Facebook shares, which were down by almost 5% at the market's close. This comes the day after whistleblower Frances Haugen, a former Facebook product manager, went public on 60 Minutes Sunday night. Haugen amassed internal documents that revealed Facebook's awareness of harm caused by its platforms, and she provided the evidence to lawmakers and the media. The whistleblower is scheduled to testify before Congress on Tuesday about Facebook's impact on young users. Back to you, Steph.
Thanks, Eileen. And this just in, Facebook and Instagram appear to be up and working again for many users. But NTD has tested WhatsApp, and it seems the messaging service is still down. And an agent from the Drug Enforcement Administration was killed in a shooting that took place on board a train in Tucson, Arizona this morning. 2 other law enforcement officers were injured. Authorities were conducting a routine check on a stationary Amtrak train in Tucson when a man opened fire. One of the agents injured is in critical condition while the other is stable. Local police said, quote, the suspect, after exchanging rounds with the officers, barricaded himself in the bathroom. He later died. None of the passengers on board are injured. There was a massive oil spill in California over the weekend. Over 100,000 gallons of oil covered over 6 miles of water, killing fish and covering the beaches with tar. Authorities responded immediately to contain the oil and rescue oil-drenched birds. NTD's Faye Corder tells us more.
The city of Huntington Beach, California confirms that Beta Offshore, a subsidiary of Amplify Energy Corporation, is responsible for the oil spill.
There was a leak in a pipeline that is decades old that traveled to a platform. And so they've cut off the valve, or they've shut off the valve rather, and then they capped the pipeline, and they have divers going down, like you said, and trying to repair it.
Katrina Foley is the supervisor of Orange County where the spill took place. She says the spill has had tremendous impact on both their environment and their economies.
We are pouring all resources available from the county, from the local cities, Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, Laguna Beach, as well as our Orange County Sheriff's Department Harbor Patrol. We are all in.
An estimated 126,000 gallons were spilled into Huntington Beach and Newport Beach, covering around 6 miles. The beaches are covered in tar and dead fish, and workers are rushing to clean up the spill. Temporary floating barriers are used to contain the oil. Amplify Energy's stock immediately nosedived over 50%.
It's a tough situation. I do give the company credit for quickly holding a news conference and vowing to take this seriously and to go to the ends of the earth to really try to make it right and mitigate the damage.
Evan Neerman is founder of crisis management firm Red Banyan. He says the company needs to counter the images people will see on their screens, such as those of tar on the sands, oil in the water, and affected animals.
If I were advising the company, I would tell them you need to get some camera crews out there with your workers as they're sucking up the oil, minimizing the environmental damage, and trying to make things right.
The oil also reached Talbert Marsh, a local ecological reserve. Amplify Energy says all of its Beta offshore operations have been shut down and that it's cooperating with local authorities. Faye Quarter, NTD News.
Starting today, teachers and staff of New York City public schools need to be vaccinated to continue working. Over 97% have been vaccinated, but there are some who are refusing to comply with the mandate. NTD's Jason Perry attended a rally for teachers.
New York City public schools just started enforcing the vaccine mandates for teachers and staff. We are here in New York City, right outside of the Department of Education, where Teachers for Choice is holding a rally and a march against the new vaccine mandates. Mawuli Oliveri has been working for the New York City Department of Education for 23 years, and he has been teaching at the same school for the last 18 years. His students call him Mr. O. He is now on unpaid leave.
Mr. O always got on us because we were doing what was wrong. I told him that I love them, but you got to do what's right. So at the end of the day, I can't give them a message, do what's right, and then come out here and say, look, I got to follow with the crowd. I don't care if it's the governor. I don't care if it's the judge. If they're telling me to do something wrong, they're wrong. And that's it. That's just what it is. We got to stand up for integrity. Be a man based on principle, not based on the crowd.
How? Like, can you explain that?
Because my daughter and my son are watching me. That's what it is. My children are watching me. They will never go, I will never go to the grave, and they will never say that my daddy didn't fight. They will never say my daddy did not fight.
Tony Maraglia was also put on unpaid leave due to her decision not to get the vaccine.
It's about freedom, and I'm fighting not only for myself and my colleagues, but for our children that I think is going to come to next. They're going to be mandated, and I don't think they should be.
Others also voiced their concerns about the vaccine mandates.
We are against medical tyranny. We are against medical apartheid.
Fight for freedom. It's not about the vaccines. It's about freedom. Freedom and safety and common sense.
We reached out to the New York City Department of Education for comment, but did not hear back before airtime. According to their website, Teachers for Choice founder Michael Payne has filed a lawsuit against the Mayor Bill de Blasio in an effort to end the vaccine mandates. Jason Perry, NTD News, New York.
And the vaccine mandate is fully in effect in New York City. Now criticism is becoming louder, especially from the Black community. NTD's Arian Pazdar has the story from New York City's City Hall.
You might know Angela Stanton King, a relative of Martin Luther King, or former NBA player Kwame Brown. He was the #1 overall draft pick in 2001. And those are just two of the speakers who took issue with mass vaccination campaigns.
Our mission here today is to educate the Black community on the rights to their own bodies and to also eradicate medical apartheid.
Less than 30% of Black Americans in New York City between the ages of 18 and 44 have gotten the shot. When the vaccine rollout first started, Mayor Bill de Blasio acknowledged that Black people might not trust the vaccine due to past experiences.
There's a reason why people have this distrust. That said, we are here today fighting this pandemic with leaders from communities of color playing key roles.
But to have Black leaders advocating for the vaccine may not be enough.
Because if you see a Black face, that means that you have to jump and do it. It means that we Black people don't have a mind of our own and we're not individuals, but we're just like a whole group.
Many also pointed out that pro-vaccination information gets promoted by influential organizations.
They use our celebrities to kind of coach everybody up to get them to listen. I've been a part of it. When you make that type of money, you don't want to say anything that's going to mess up that cash flow. So you just stay quiet. And now is not the time for anybody to stay quiet.
Different speakers agreed that the virus is widely reported on from only one side.
They've used their ability just to promote propaganda. If the only way they can get people to comply is that they have people afraid.
I think the first thing we need to do in order to get over the pandemic is start allowing people to hear the truth. We need to begin listening to other medical experts besides just Dr. Fauci and his particular cabinet.
Fauci was recently asked whether he considered resigning over some of the false predictions he has made. He said he's not considering resignation. Ariane Pastar, NTD News, New York.
The holidays are coming up, but the virus is still here. Does this mean we shouldn't gather for Christmas? Initially, Dr. Fauci said it was too soon to tell. He's now changed his answer. NTD's Miguel Moreno has the details.
Christmas is a ways away, but a CBS host asked Dr. Anthony Fauci if it would be safe for Americans to gather at that time.
It's just too soon to tell. We've just got to concentrating on continuing to get those numbers down.
Dr. Fauci's critics came down on the doctor's statements, like Senator of Kentucky Rand Paul saying, "I don't think anyone is going to be listening to him." But Dr. Fauci says people have misinterpreted his statement about Christmas gatherings.
That was misinterpreted as my saying we can't spend Christmas with our families, which was absolutely not the case. I will be spending Christmas with my family. I encourage people, particularly the vaccinated people who are protected, to have a good, normal Christmas with your family. But
He did, however, change his position. What was once too early to tell is now a resounding approval of Christmas gatherings.
If they do begin to fall ill, they should definitely cancel their travel plans.
Dr. Peter McCullough is an academic internist and cardiologist from Dallas, Texas.
It's been about 2 years since the COVID-19 pandemic started. The vaccines have been available for almost a year now. Do you think gatherings in general should still be in question?
No, they never really should have been in question. We understood through the course of the pandemic now, the virus is not transmitted if people don't have any symptoms. So as long as there's no fever, nasal congestion, cough, the virus is not going to be spread. So we could have always gotten together.
According to the findings of a study published by the CDC, asymptomatic cases are unlikely to contribute substantially to the spread of the virus. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
3 members of the Swiss Guard have resigned over the Vatican's vaccine mandate. They are the security force that's been responsible for protecting the Pope for over 500 years. A Swiss Guard official said Sunday that the 3 members have voluntarily left the Guard and returned to Switzerland. That's because they refused to take the COVID-19 vaccine. 3 other Guardsmen are temporarily suspended until they complete vaccination. The Vatican started requiring a health pass for all residents, workers, and visitors beginning October 1st. People must show proof of vaccination, recovery from COVID-19, or a negative virus test from the previous 48 hours. But the Vatican has ordered that Swiss Guards must be vaccinated. There are 135 Swiss Guards, all of whom are Catholic Swiss citizens. And with the debt ceiling deadline fast approaching, President Biden today warned that if Congress doesn't act fast to raise the debt limit, it would be a meteor hitting the economy. He says Americans could start seeing the impacts even before the mid-October deadline. NTD's Melina Weiskup reports.
October 18th is the date Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has said the government will deplete its funds if the $28 trillion debt ceiling is not raised. President Biden said Monday he expects to see the impacts even earlier than the deadline.
In the days ahead, even before the default date, people may see the value of their retirement accounts shrink. They may see interest rates go up, which will ultimately raise their mortgage payments and car payments. Democrats are willing to do all the work stopping it. Republicans just have to let us do our job. Just get out of the way.
Biden describes it as a meteor to the economy that could be avoided if Republican senators complied with the Democrat strategy of passing the debt suspension bill this week. It already passed the House and would essentially cancel out the debt limit until December of 2022. But so far, Republicans have stiff-armed this plan, saying that if Democrats want to spend a loan, they should raise the debt alone too.
So the debt ceiling they're going to have to raise on their own is about the future and not the past.
But Democrats say that suspending the debt limit now isn't to authorize new funding, it's to pay for already enacted obligations like pre-approved social welfare programs.
So if we're going to make good on what's already been approved by previous Congresses and previous presidents and parties, we have to pay for it. Social Security benefits, the American people are promised, salaries for servicemen and women, benefits for veterans. We're going to have to raise the debt limit if we're going to meet those obligations.
Now, what both parties are saying are polar opposites, and both are actually half-truths. So it is true that even if the Biden administration doesn't spend one more dollar, Congress will still have to raise the debt limit no matter what. But it also opens the door to an unlimited amount of spending if Congress raises the debt ceiling by suspending the debt until December of next year. So that means whatever social welfare programs or government-funded programs that they pass between now and next December, if those programs can't be fully funded through taxpayer dollars, that amount will be added to the national debt. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
And the Senate leader, Chuck Schumer, says Congress needs to make headway on this by the end of the week, although it's unclear which process he plans to use to get it done. Schumer will meet with Democrats tomorrow to discuss their strategy moving forward. And activists chased Senator Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona into the bathroom over the weekend. They were pressuring the Democratic senator to vote in favor of that $3.5 trillion spending package. But these activists may have broken the law. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on that.
This video uploaded by Lucha gives us a glimpse of the activist organization's indoor protests on Sunday at Arizona State University.
Right now is a real moment that our people need.
They demanded that Senator Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, seen in the bright dress, vote for the $3.5 trillion spending package. Sinema entered the restroom, but that didn't stop the activists.
We knocked on doors. We need solutions. The Build Back Better plan has the solutions that we need. We knocked on doors for you to get you elected, and just how we got you elected, we can get you out of office if you don't support what you promised us.
The next day, Sinema said it is vital to our democracy that constituents can freely criticize her positions and decisions. But she accused Lucha, or Living United for Change in Arizona, of breaking the law. She said yesterday's behavior was not legitimate protest. It is unacceptable for activist organizations to instruct their members to jeopardize themselves by engaging in unlawful activities such as gaining entry to closed university buildings, disrupting learning environments, and filming students in a restroom. In Arizona, it is illegal to film people in restrooms without their consent. Lucha says they fight for social, racial, and economic transformation. The organization hasn't gotten back to us, but they accused Sinema of being completely inaccessible, which is why they confronted her in this way. Sinema and her Democratic colleague Joe Manchin have rejected the multi-trillion-dollar spending package. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
The Biden administration plans to keep some Trump-era policies in place as it reins in China's unfair trade practices. The top trade rep says she'll talk to her Chinese counterpart as China failed to make good on its purchasing promises from 2020. NTD's Patrick Hayden has details on the new plan released today.
U.S. Trade Representative Catherine Tai on Monday set out the Biden administration's new strategy on trade relations with China.
For too long, China's lack of adherence to global trading norms has undercut the prosperity of Americans and others around the world. In recent years, Beijing has doubled down on its state-centered economic system.
China's state command economy has increased, and free market principles have taken more of a back seat. This as concerns about human rights abuses increase, most notably in China's region of Xinjiang, where the administration deems genocide is happening.
It is increasingly clear that China's plans do not include meaningful reforms to address the concerns that have been shared by the United States and many other countries.
China failed to deliver on a Trump-era Phase 1 trade deal, in which China agreed to buy $200 billion of U.S. goods during this and last year.
The United States still keeping pedal to the metal, pressure on China so that using the tariff leverage as a way to force the Chinese Communist Party to recognize that this administration is not going to be very much different in comparison with the previous administration.
China met about 58% of its purchase commitments in 2020 and 69% this year to August. US agriculture benefited the most, with about 92% of targets reached.
The Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese government are basically pressuring US multinationals, US Chamber of Commerce, and business groups have been pressuring the Biden administration to let these tariffs go, so that we can go back to the old normal, which was basically no leverage with China.
The Biden administration has maintained tariffs on nearly $360 billion worth of Chinese goods, enacted by the previous administration. It says it will be extending tariff exclusions on certain Chinese goods, but won't be pursuing a Phase 2 agreement with Beijing. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
And U.S. Trade Representative Tai said she'll meet with her Chinese counterpart in coming days to review the Phase 1 deal. Senior officials also said Sunday it's possible the administration will impose more tariffs on China if the talks don't go well. And police had to reroute traffic around the busiest border crossing that connects the U.S. with Canada today due to the presence of potential explosives. The bridge stretches from Detroit to Windsor, Ontario. Authorities are still investigating the threat. Canadian border agents found the potential explosives this morning. They were inside a vehicle in an inspection area on the Canadian side. Authorities have detained the driver. Police evacuated the nearby area and rerouted traffic. Operations returned to normal in late afternoon. The border crossing is critical to trade between the U.S. and Canada. And the Michigan governor has vetoed a number of election reform bills. State lawmakers passed the bills last month with some bipartisan support, but the governor claims they would discredit the 2020 presidential election. NTD's Allison Lee brings us more.
Michigan's Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer vetoed several election reform bills on Sunday. Republican lawmakers sponsored the bills, and at least 24 House Democrats supported some of them. Two of the bills would have codified existing practices, limiting outside parties from accessing the state's voter database and prohibiting voting systems from being connected to the internet on Election Day. Another bill would have expanded the types of buildings that could be used as polling places. The bill would have allowed cities to set up polling stations at senior facilities and apartment complexes only if public buildings like schools weren't available. A fourth bill would have required election challengers to attend training. The governor slammed the bills, saying they attempt to suppress the vote or perpetuate the big lie, which she called a deception that would discredit the 2020 election. She also claimed the bills would make it tougher for people living in large senior facilities and apartment complexes to vote. The Michigan Republican Party criticized the governor for vetoing the bills. They said she's more interested in grandstanding and pandering rather than strengthening the security of our elections. Allison Lee, NTD News.
Former presidential candidate and New York mayoral candidate Andrew Yang has officially left the Democratic Party. He announced today that he's now registered as an independent. Yang shared the news in a blog post on his website. Yang describes the switch from Democrat to independent as a strangely emotional experience. He says his goal is to do as much as he can to advance society, but that the system is stuck. According to him, it's stuck in part because polarization is getting worse than ever. The former Democrat explained, "Now that I'm not a member of one party or another, I feel like I can be even more honest about both the system and the people in it." Yang further adds that despite being a lifelong Democrat, it's always been an odd fit, since he's not very ideological. He also expresses discomfort with making partisan arguments. Yang concludes by saying, quote, "Breaking up with the Democratic Party feels like the right thing to do," and hints at future political endeavors. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis revealed today that his wife of over 10 years, Casey, has been diagnosed with breast cancer. The First Lady of Florida is also a mother of 3 children under the age of 5. DeSantis announced the news in a statement. He didn't provide any details about the stage of the cancer, but emphasized Casey is a true fighter and she will never, never, never give up. Messages of well wishes and prayers began pouring in following the news, including from Florida Democrats. 41-year-old Casey has been a very involved First Lady. She has spearheaded several major initiatives in Florida promoting family services, mental health, and education. She is frequently seen by her husband's side out in the community and at events, often with their 3 young children. Before becoming Florida's First Lady, Casey was already widely known by Floridians for being an Emmy Award-winning television host in the region. Casey has not yet commented on the diagnosis. And the news of Casey DeSantis' diagnosis, it comes during Breast Cancer Awareness Month. The National Breast Cancer Foundation reports that screenings were set back last year due to the pandemic. It's potentially life-saving, so if you or a loved one missed a checkup, this month is a great time to get it done. And more than $2 million have been raised for a Marine who was put in military jail for speaking out against the U.S. military's leadership amid the chaotic Afghanistan evacuation. More than 29,000 donors have contributed for Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller's case. Scheller is awaiting a hearing over viral videos in which he called for accountability from top leaders in the military and the Department of Defense. Officials say he's currently in confinement at a Marine Corps base in North Carolina, but it's not clear when his hearing will take place. In August, Scheller posted a video on social media in which he alleged that top military brass were not taking responsibility for how they handled the withdrawal from Afghanistan. His video quickly went viral. Military superiors ordered Scheller to stop posting to social media, but he continued and was eventually arrested and put in the brig. And coming up, 2 companies focused on autonomous driving technology recently became the first in California to receive regulatory approval permits. These permits bring them one step closer to offering driverless rides to passengers in California. And an American wins the title at this year's Timbersports competition in Germany. Athletes from around the world used axes and modified chainsaws to break records. Stay tuned for more here on NTD News.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm gonna pass the savings directly on to you. For example, you get my 6-piece towel sets, regular $109.99, now only $44.98, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit mypillow.com.
In every country communism gains power, authoritarianism and death followed in its wake. Communism promises a world without suffering, and yet, in its execution, does the exact opposite. Following Lenin's death, Stalin's 29-year reign killed an estimated 60 to 66 million people. More famines and purges would occur. The very peasants that communism was supposed to benefit instead starved to death under its rule. The party dictates what is right and wrong. Mao ended up killing between 50 million and 70 million people. As an investigative journalist, I want to understand why.
autonomous driving technology companies are one step closer to offering driverless rides to passengers in California. The DMV recently issued deployment permits to the two companies. Here's NTD's Cynthia Kai with more.
General Motors Cruise and Alphabet's Waymo became the first two self-driving car companies to receive regulatory approval to offer driverless rides to passengers in California. On September 30th, the California Department of Motor Vehicles issued autonomous vehicle deployment permits, allowing the companies to charge a fee and receive compensation for autonomous services offered to the public. Both companies are now allowed to offer their autonomous technology commercially outside of a testing program. Cruise is approved to operate its vehicles within designated parts of San Francisco between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. at a maximum speed limit of 30 miles per hour. Waymo vehicles, which have safety drivers behind the wheel, are approved to operate on public roads within parts of San Francisco and San Mateo counties with a speed limit of no more than 65 miles per hour. The two companies have recently ramped up testing in San Francisco, with Cruise using GM's electric Bolt EV vehicles and Waymo using Jaguar all-electric Jaguar I-Pace SUVs. Waymo told NTD in an email statement that it has not announced plans to launch a commercial service in California yet. Cruise did not respond by press deadline. Both companies still need to obtain another permit from the California Public Utilities Commission to start charging passengers for rides. Cynthia Kai, NTD News, California.
For over a month, everyone over 12 years old in New York City has had to show a vaccine pass to dine indoors. NTD's Phil Zhou takes a look at how that's impacted the restaurant business.
Restaurants, cafes, and more. If you want to dine indoors in New York City, you have to show your vaccine pass. But many shop owners are saying business is way down since the vaccine mandate, including Rocco's pastry shop. Italian bakery Pasticceria Rocco has been in business for decades in downtown Manhattan. The owner told NTD News business is down a whopping 50% compared to before the pandemic.
The numbers are dwindling and dwindling each time. I mean, the city's a disaster.
Now with the city's vaccine mandate that started in August, things are even worse.
I think a lot of people are not coming in the city. I can remember Bleecker Street packed full of people, and I don't see it anymore.
Another owner said he doesn't agree with the vaccine mandate, but now he has no choice.
We got visited by 2 inspections. They threatened to remove our liquor license. I have to put my personal feelings aside to protect my 90 employees and protect our beloved business.
Business was down about 40% in the first week when he had to enforce the mandate.
I'll tell you that the first couple of days were rough. We actually had to turn people away.
If I'm hungry, like I said, I have to walk back to my apartment and make my own food.
Generoso Allo says if things keep going this way, her business might not be able to make it.
I would love people to just unite and stop the hate with each other, really, because it's too much hate, and they really should be united.
Phil Zhou, NTD News, New York.
American Jason Lentz won the individual title in the 2021 Timbersports competition. Elite loggers from around the world showcased their abilities in events from tree felling to chainsawing. NTD's Kevin Hogan has more on the lumberjack skills that brought him to victory.
The Steel Timbersports World Championships kicked off Saturday in Munich, Germany, after being postponed in 2020 due to the pandemic.
1, go!
West Virginian Jason Lentz is a fourth-generation lumberjack. He's a burly man at 6'6", 245 pounds, and was crowned individual world champion at Motor World. The adept lumberjack narrowly beat second-place Canadian Marcel Dupuis and third-placed Martin Kamarek of the Czech Republic. The competition originated in Wisconsin in 1985, and now it has 6 different events with both pro and collegiate divisions, with both men's and women's competitions. Safety is a top priority as athletes compete in fierce competition, including the underhand chop. That's where competitors must chop a poplar log from both sides while standing on top of it. The competitors earn more points for faster cuts, like in the springboard, where they have to chop a block on top of a 9-foot pole, or the single buck, where they rip through 19 inches of white pine, or the standing block chop, which resembles tree felling. Other events are the stock saw, in which they use just a regular chainsaw, and the hot saw. In this one, the athletes wield souped-up, custom-made saws built with maximum power and precision to get the job done as quickly as possible. Dupuis finished the hot saw event in 5.43 seconds, with Lentz just behind, but fast enough to secure the top spot on the podium. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
Coming up, a new Chinese film celebrates Chinese soldiers fighting American troops during the Korean War, and it's breaking a box office record. Some see it as a reflection of the regime's effort to rein in ideological control amid recent U.S.-China tensions. And the biggest leak of offshore financial data in history allegedly ties world leaders to secret wealth. Some leaders have already denied wrongdoing. A Chinese film celebrating Chinese soldiers fighting American troops during the Korean War is breaking box office records in China. In recent years, a growing number of Chinese films have cast the U.S. or American nationals as the villains. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more.
The communist regime is further fanning the flames of anti-U.S. sentiment. A new film glorifying Chinese soldiers fighting Americans in the Korean War is breaking a global box office record. According to Variety, China's The Battle at Lake Changjin was the highest-grossing movie anywhere in the world over the past weekend, earning $203 million. The movie portrays the brutal 1950 Battle of Chosin Reservoir during the Korean War, which the Chinese regime officially calls the war to resist American aggression and aid Korea. Chinese authorities have issued orders that movies should focus on themes such as loving the party, the country, and socialism, and sing the praises of the Chinese Communist Party, the motherland, the people, and its heroes, which this tearjerker tries to do. Chinese media reported that it's the country's most expensive movie, costing as much as $200 million and using 7,000 film crew and 70,000 background actors. The film is co-directed by A-list Chinese and Hong Kong filmmakers and enlisted young Chinese super idols who have tremendous influence among young people in China. That includes Jackson Yi. The 20-year-old has over 70 million followers on Chinese social media platform Weibo and topped the Forbes China celebrity list for the second year in a row. Another cast member is Wu Jing, whose previous nationalist film Wolf Warrior 2 is China's highest-grossing movie. China in recent years has seen more movies that cast American Army, Marines, or nationals as the main villains, who are then defeated by Chinese communist soldiers. The regime may be trying to strengthen young Chinese people's anti-American sentiments and pump up their loyalty to the Communist Party. The Battle of Lake Changjin is one of the Korean War's bloodiest battles. Estimates of Chinese casualties range from nearly 20,000 to 60,000, almost half the number of the entire Chinese troop. The Chinese regime says over 4,000 soldiers were frozen to death due to the extreme low temperatures. The U.S. reported over 10,000 casualties. That's including nearly 3,000 South Korean soldiers. The U.S. troops also provided cover and helped evacuate 98,000 North Korean refugees to South Korea. U.S. historians call it the greatest evacuation movement by sea in U.S. military history. Hong Kong's largest independent trade union disbanded on Sunday. Vice Chairman Liu Tang said members of the Hong Kong Confederation of Trade Unions, or HKCTU, voted to break up because political uncertainty had made it difficult to continue. During the gathering, unionists joined hands, wearing T-shirts that said "Constant dripping of water wears away the stone." It's an old Chinese saying that means persistence will achieve an unlikely goal, similar to the English saying "little strokes fell great oaks." Pro-Beijing media have suggested the union, HKCTU, was a foreign agent that can be punished with up to life in prison under the national security law Beijing imposed on Hong Kong last June. The law punishes what Beijing broadly defines as subversion, secession, terrorism, and collusion with foreign forces. That includes pro-democracy movements. HKCTU denies the accusations made against them. The union says it helped labor workers get long-delayed wages and that it negotiated to increase their salaries in line with inflation. According to Reuters, at least 29 trade unions in the former British colony dissolved this year for fear of violating the national security law. Some activists say the union's situation in Hong Kong increasingly resembles that in mainland China.
British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss says the UK will be tough on countries that don't play by the rules. Speaking at the Conservative Party conference on Sunday, she said she's planning new security pacts to strengthen the free world against malign actors. NTD's Jane Werrell has the story.
The new Foreign Secretary pledging to build security pacts with democratic countries to fight malign forces.
The democratic world order faces a stark choice. Either we retreat and retrench in the face of malign actors, or we club together and we advance the cause of freedom.
Speaking at the Conservative Party conference on Sunday, Liz Truss says Britain will challenge authoritarian states through security and trade. Here she directly warns Beijing.
It's important we trade with China, but we must make sure it's reliable trade, that it avoids strategic dependency, and that it doesn't involve the violation of intellectual property rights or forced technology transfer. The world is safer and more prosperous when countries abide by their international obligations.
She specifically spoke about an agreement between Australia, the US and the UK, which aims to counter China's growing influence in the Indo-Pacific.
Liz Truss was the International Trade Secretary before she was promoted to Foreign Secretary during Boris Johnson's reshuffle in September. Speaking at a fringe event at the Conservative Party conference, she said that the US trade deal isn't the be-all and end-all for the UK, and she highlighted trade deals with the Pacific bloc. She also emphasised working out wider foreign policy with the US and Australia and trading with developing countries so that they won't be drawn into the orbit of authoritarian states. Jane Werrell, NTD News.
A massive leak of financial documents known as the Pandora Papers was published over the weekend. According to several major news organizations, the papers allegedly tie world leaders to secret stores of wealth, including King Abdullah of Jordan, the Czech Prime Minister, and associates of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Jason Albano reports.
The dump of almost 12 million records comes 5 years after the leak known as the Panama Papers, which exposed how money was hidden by the wealthy in ways undetectable by law enforcement agencies. The International Consortium of Investigative Journalists said the new trove of files were linked to dozens of current and former national leaders and amount to the biggest leak of offshore data in history. However, the group did not say how the files were obtained. Among the claims are that Jordan's King Abdullah, a close ally of the United States, used offshore accounts to spend more than $100 million on luxury homes in the US and UK. Lawyers representing Abdullah told the consortium he had not, quote, made any use whatsoever of the proceeds of aid or assistance intended for public use. The Washington Post, which is part of the network, reported on the case of Svetlana Krivonagich, a Russian woman who the paper says was in a secret relationship with President Vladimir Putin. The Post says that just weeks after she gave birth to a baby girl in 2003, she became the owner of a Monaco apartment through an offshore company. The Kremlin did not respond to requests for comment. The documents also allege that the Czech Republic's Prime Minister, Andrej Babis, owned an offshore estate worth $22 million on the French Riviera. Babis on Sunday denied any wrongdoing.
Coming up, the COVID-19 crisis has increased the poverty rate in France and widened the wealth gap. That's according to official figures. One economist says bad policies are to blame. And the UK's new simplified international travel rules come into effect today. Vaccinated travelers from non-red list countries no longer need to take a pre-departure test. Find out more in just a moment here on NTD News. The gap between the wealthy and poor in France continued to increase during the pandemic, according to official figures. The poverty rate also increased across the country. An economist says the European Central Bank's decision to inject funds into the financial system rather than the real economy has made issues worse. NTD's David Vives has the story.
Despite the government's financial assistance during the CCP virus crisis, poverty has gained ground in France. 21% of French are in poverty as of September 2021, according to official figures. And according to a survey, 32% of French struggle to pay their rent or mortgage. That means new categories of the population are now affected by poverty. According to economist Philippe Murer, the lockdowns created a downfall spiral for the French economy.
The
lockdown policy was a choice. Whatever the consequences, it has cost the French people 240 billion euros, and they will pay twice for the bad management of the COVID crisis. First, they have to pay by ceasing their activities. Then they will have to pay back the public debt.
In other words, taxes will be increased through different measures in France, and social security benefits will drop for the poorest category of population. Another statistic of significance, the mortality rate between March and April increased by 27% from 2019 to 2020. People living in the poorest municipalities were more heavily impacted. Paradoxically, the wealthiest 1% in France have increased their standards of living in the past 3 years. And France isn't an isolated case. According to Forbes, the 10 wealthiest billionaires around the world have increased their revenue by a combined $540 billion since March 2020. As part of its pandemic response, the European Central Bank, or ECB, injected funds into the Eurozone economy. But according to Murer, this was an unfair measure that contributed to the wealth gap.
La BCE a engagé 2000 milliards.
In 2020, in order to sustain the economy, the ECB bought 2 trillion euros in bonds with the public money it owes. This is totally immoral, because very little money has been injected into the real economy. But the ECB funded the finance sector with all this big money, as if it was raining money. So we can see it's totally immoral, because we're increasing the capital of the wealthiest people, but entrepreneurs and business owners are being given almost nothing.
According to projections by the World Bank, approximately 119 to 124 million people will be pushed into poverty due to the CCP virus pandemic. David Vives, NTD News.
And rising electricity bills and gas prices in France has been fueling discontent among protesters and drivers who complain of increasing pressure on their living costs. NTD's Coast Temenes has the story.
France has been experiencing an intense rise in fuel and electricity costs. Last year's cold winter in Europe put pressure on supplies. As a result, stored gas levels are much lower than normal.
Definitely, the price of petrol has increased greatly these past few years. This was just a small fuel tank, but as soon as you have big fuel tanks, it will become a hefty bill.
On Saturday, a group of protesters known as Yellow Vests took to the streets in Paris. They have conducted weekly protests since November 2018 due to a rise in petrol prices. Recent protests have been centered on the COVID health pass, but many also carried banners criticizing the rising energy bills.
There are mothers of 2 today who have to choose between paying for their energy bill or feeding their children. Therein lies the problem. What's left to live by once we pay the energy bill? It's a big problem.
Drivers see the rise in costs as unsustainable, as petrol prices are nearing £1.70 per litre.
We have to work hard to earn more than 100 euros a day. For me, I rent this car, which I pay 50 euros for, and for the remaining 50 euros I have to eat. I have to fuel up with petrol, so that means I work all day to earn 50 euros.
Although France will move to ease the cost of rising prices for consumers, Prime Minister Jean Castex added that petrol will not be included on that list, saying the situation was different. French Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire said earlier this week he expects rising energy prices to last for a few more months. Coast Temenes, NTD News.
And in the UK, the fuel crisis is said to be virtually at an end in many English counties, but gas stations in and around London are still short. The government is deploying the army to help deliver fuel. NTD's Malcolm Hudson has this report.
The Petrol Retailers Association says that about 22% of the petrol stations in London and the southeast of England are still without fuel. Executive Director Gordon Balmer says that this is due to the dense population and that it might take up to 10 days to get back up to normal. 200 military personnel will deliver fuel to tackle driver shortages from Monday. In Hemel Hempstead, soldiers fill up tankers ready to deliver. Whilst in London, there are still long queues at petrol stations.
That's my 3rd petrol station which I'm trying. So it's just terrible. Nothing we can do about it. We just need to wait.
and we couldn't find any anywhere. I just driven actually from Sidcup and there was absolutely none at all. But I'm hoping to be able to top up at least half my tank now.
To be fair, I've only just pulled up, but I've passed 5 garages that are all closed, and it doesn't look like they've got any diesel, so I don't know. It's looking like the diesel pumps are closed, so I don't know what I'm going to do, because I've got a load of deliveries to do and I've only got a little bit left, so.
The Petrol Retailers Association says that the crisis is virtually at an end in Scotland, northern and central England, with only 6% of forecourts still dry. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News.
UK travel rules are simplified for most fully vaccinated travellers from today. They'll no longer need to do a pre-departure test, and the traffic light system ends. NTD's Coast Tamanez has the details.
New international travel rules came into force on Monday. The traffic light system is scrapped, with locations now categorized as either on the red list or not. The rules are simplified and cheaper for fully vaccinated residents and unvaccinated under 18s from over 50 countries and territories. They don't need to take a pre-departure rapid test or an 8-day PCR test after arriving in the UK. They don't need to self-isolate at home or where they're staying either. All they need is a single PCR test on day 2 after arrival. Unvaccinated travellers from non-red list countries need to take a pre-departure test, day 2 and day 8 PCR tests, and self-isolate for 10 days. Travellers from a red list country are still required to spend 11 nights at a quarantine hotel. It comes amid reports the number of countries on the red list will be slashed from 54 to 9 later in the week. Brazil, Mexico and South Africa are expected to be removed from the red list. Fully vaccinated travellers to England will be able to use a cheaper lateral flow test for their day 2 post-arrival test soon. The government says it aims to have it in place by the October half-term week. Cost Tamanez, NTD News.
Coming up, a Russian businessman turns fish skin into leather clothing and accessories in an effort to make stylish products and reduce waste from the ocean. That and more after this short break.
You worked hard for your money. You invest in stability for your retirement and your family's future, to build and leave them with something greater. The next unprecedented financial crisis, political misstep, or unstable government can depreciate it all away. It was called the gold standard for a reason, the financial preservation of tomorrow. Diversify your assets against inflation, market volatility, and the unknown with real money. Hedge your wealth with the purest form of money, physical gold and silver. Because any currency printed on paper can be manipulated. What's backing up your IRA? Do what you need to do right now to be prepared with the Reagan Gold Group. Visit now, rggusakit.com, or call us at 866-912-1384. Receive up to $2,500 in free silver coins and a free safe with your new precious metals IRA. Call now.
You could call it fishy couture. One Russian businessman is turning fish skins into leather, which is used to produce clothing and accessories. It's one way to recycle what would otherwise be thrown away. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
These colorful leathers are tanned fish skins produced by entrepreneur Alexander Vasinov. He's been producing and selling fish skins for 3 years.
Fish skin, its scale structure, it's like a human fingerprint. Each one is individual. So we on the one hand rid the planet of waste, of dirt, and allow the fish processing industry to turn waste into revenue, however small it may be. And on the other hand, we make each one unique.
The raw material is waste from the fish processing industry. Fish waste dumped into the ocean reduces oxygen at the bottom, and it can introduce non-native diseases and invasive species. Vasinov is the founder of Ryby Mech, which means fish fur in Russian. He was trained as a chemist.
It's an interesting story when students came to me and said there is the fish skin. I looked and said, what cool stuff. Looked at its structure, I loved it all. I invested my first money, about 3 million rubles. It was my first investment.
The skin is soaked in special chemical solutions, cleaned and strengthened with the help of natural tanning agents.
The trick here is that the scales are coming off, but the chemicals are so very delicate that you can take the skins out of the solution without gloves.
Then the fish leather is dyed and varnished by hand. Painted in a variety of colors, the leathers are transformed into sewing bags, wallets, belts, clothes, and even shoes. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.